The backup is brought to you by the best evil person we know, and that is Santa Claus. I'm sorry, kids. He's real, and he's actually a killer. Evil Spy Boy. It's brought to you by Evil Spy Boy. Get your exclamation mark Spy Boys out in the chat, because thanks to his generous Patreon support, you know the drill. Evil Spy Boy is bringing you the backup. He hopes you bring the generosity to Food Bank Australia. Oh boy, Food Bank Australia is Australia's largest food relief organisation, providing 88 million meals a year to more than 2,600 charities around the country, accounting for 79% of all food received by charities from food rescue organisations. Evil Spy Boy, I mean, we make a lot of jokes about the fact that he's a cruel prick of a person, but actually to spend his own money on us to encourage you to spend your money on a charity, he's a good person, Gus.
Makes Santa look like a dick.
He does. That's why I talk shit about Santa at the top of the show. That's why I call him out. Anyway, head to tastemultifish.com for more information. The backup is where we talk about the most hard-hitting news of the week. A little bit of it is hard-hitting. Most of it was just...
really.
Most of it's piss week. That's exactly how I would phrase... so
it's a subline of our podcast. Most of it's piss week underneath. Click here.
I'm hitting my ass.
I saw a lot of people talking about how the Game Awards is just like not an award ceremony and just, you know, an announcement trailer.
Replacement.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of people complaining and going like, I don't like it because it's just like I'm just being sold to it. Just watch a bunch of ads, and it's like, but that's what you want, right? Like yeah, but you get excited about game reveals. You just don't like the fact that they're not being upfront about it, and instead calling it the Game Awards as opposed to the game reveals, featuring some awards that we say during the commercial breaks.
And the chic Hydrobot.
And the chic Hydra.
It wasn't there. It wasn't there this year. It was replaced by the Pot. It was replaced by Potman.
It was replaced by Potman. Loved Potman. Love a meme that's a meme before anyone actually gets a chance to play the game. Except for Healy, of course. Let's jump into the things announced at the Game Awards, because things won awards, but who cares? The first big thing that I've got on the list here is Star Wars.
When the Back Pocket Awards are on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to say this, but the reason being that, like, I don't care about the winners of the Game Awards, because to me it's like it's a bunch of people's opinions who I don't really know. Like, I care about our awards because I care about our opinions. I care about the websites that I follow and their lists because I know those people and their opinions. But, you know,
you don't care about Jeff Keighley's opinion?
Look, first of all, I'm not sure if Jeff Keighley actually has an opinion. I don't know if the man is capable of having an opinion.
Yeah.
An opinion would get in the way of being able to work with literally everybody. I can't sell this opinion. Exactly. But announced at the Game Awards, Star Wars Eclipse. This is one coming from Quantic Dream. A new Star Wars game, so obviously makers of Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human, etc., etc. We got a very moody, atmospheric trailer. I am into the cult-esque, weird religious vibes that appear to be going on in this thing. Pete, this is a side of Star Wars that I feel like we don't see too often in mainstream Star Wars stuff, because it does seem a lot darker and it does seem a lot more like...
It's definitely the kind of story that's relegated to video games. Typically for Star Wars, it's like, oh, we'll do the we'll do the like fun action adventures on the big screen, but over in video games is where murder robots and the really dark
drumming cults,
the dark past of the Sith kind of exists, because it's such a like. I feel like the prequels have opened the door to anything happening, but because all that culty stuff behind the Sith is a little bit woo-woo fantasy. It's like, the Sith were a race and they had all this power, but now there's people who follow the Sith and they're just called Sith. It's like, it's a bit whatever. It felt like it was like 3 lines like penciled in by George Lucas, and he was like, it doesn't really fucking matter what's going on over there. So it's not really like, it was never a really developed sensibility. It's just like it's magic shit happening over in the corner, and the games exploring that I think is a little more fun, because they in the past have been canon and most of it is now legend. So who knows where this picks up. I assume will be part of the new Disney canon of Star Wars. So I'm interested to see what they do with it and what Quantic Dream do with it. I was very interested to see that it was like pitched as an action game as opposed to a story game.
A narrative choice game.
Yeah. Which Quantic Dream, not so good at the moving around the 3D world stuff, but definitely very good at storytelling. So,
I like this because it shows me things that I don't normally see in Star Wars. And my number one gripe in Star Wars is that everything is always just the same story. So this is actually telling something. Well, from the moody atmospheric trailer that I'm seeing here, seems to be pretty. Just, like weird and twisted. They described it as an action adventure, multiple character branching narrative game, which is a lot of words.
Yeah.
But leading off with action adventure, like you said, is a bit of a departure from what we normally see from Quantic Dream. Gus?
Look, I'm excited, but I'm also exhausted by Star Wars. And so I feel like I can see the appeal, especially for Pete here, in the sense that, as you said, it's like, is it now the extended universe now that Disney have finished their main films? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's the stuff they made non-canon now getting to make their own version of it, which from everything I remember, extended universe stuff got darker, got cooler. All the books like played in places that the films never dabbled with. And this is kind of like...
It never got cool.
Didn't it? Oh, okay, right. I just remember like more bigger steps were taken, and you know, it was like some bolder sort of storylines played out because it was the books and it was like less important. And so it's like, this is now Disney set up their little like scrubbing of the law. It's like, now we can do the extended universe stuff because there's probably going to be less and less films, and this is like free reign to go, all right, go nuts with it now. See what happens another 1,000 years when the Sith are, well, Yoda's still there. But yeah, look, I'm just tired of Star Wars now, which makes me sad, but maybe this could reinvigorate me. It doesn't sound confident.
I wouldn't look to this to reinvigorate.
I wouldn't count on it.
But
no,
maybe.
Who knows? You could get a surprise.
It's a sexy
reinvigorated me for Star Wars. I'll tell you what really reinvigorated me. My God, I invigorated all over the place when this got announced. Alan Wake 2. Come on, a decade after the first game. And we had heard rumblings that there was an Alan Wake sequel in the works. But the trailer got revealed, officially announcing the game. We don't really know anything about it. Sam Lake came out afterwards and sort of started talking about the game. But he said that they're leaning heavily into the horror for this one. That the first one was kind of like... The first one was more like a dark episode of the X-Files, I suppose.
Yeah, it was like thriller action.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would put an action thriller.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are in a different section of Blockbuster then, Peter.
We're opposite sides of the same shelf.
Whereas, first of all, they appear to have turned Alan Wake into Keanu Reeves.
It does look like that.
And then they said that they're leaning hard into the horror part of this, and that it's going to have it's going to be a horror survival game, basically. Which we were actually watching this in the office together, and I was sitting with Steph, and I was like, "Did you play the first Alan Wake game?" She was like, "No, I kind of like played it." Oh, did she? Yeah,
she played through Alan Wake, but didn't have.
Yeah, maybe
not I don't think American Nightmare or.
Yeah, right. Maybe that was it. Yeah. But she was like, "Oh, I kind of like, it wasn't really my thing." And I'm like, 10 years later, Steph has developed as a human being and is now a horror aficionado and loves survival games. And I was like, this game, and really likes Keanu Reeves. So this thing is just made for her right now. But yeah, I'm super excited for this. I love when a beloved game can come back in a way that feels like it's earned itself because of Control. Like, I feel like Remedy have sort of like done the hard work to go, actually, this isn't just like a cash in 10 years later. This is, we made Control, and Control was great, and we learned tons of lessons from Control that we can be taking over to this as well.
And Alan Wake, he used the torch as his like main mechanic. Here he's got some like, the other Keanu Reeves thing I'm getting from it is some weird like steampunky thing that's given off a lot of what's the other Keanu Reeves film where he fights the Constantine? It's got a kind of Constantine vibe to
it. Yeah, it does.
Vibe to it. So it's all playing
in
into
the
that.
street.
He's wet in the street,
isn't he?
Yeah,
he is. Wait, he's always wet in the street.
Keanu?
Both
Keanu.
No,
yeah,
both
sure.
of them.
Matrix, wet in the street. Constantine.
Yep.
Wet in the street.
Wet in the street. The lake house.
Lake house. Wet in the lake.
Well, wet in the lane. Yeah. The torch thing looks like that thing in Harry Potter where it like captures the light. From
John Wick.
street lights.
Yeah, just a little sink.
John Wick.
What was
wet
that?
in the street.
John Wick. Oh, soaked in the street.
Yeah. Cyberpunk. Wet in the street.
Wet in the street.
Yeah. Wet in the street.
Yeah. I think we're onto something here. I feel like I'm probably the biggest Alan Wake fan out of the three of us because I was the most excited for this.
I adored Alan Wake, but you have a special place in your heart for Alan Wake. I loved it when I played it, but didn't think about it at all afterwards, except to go like, "Oh, it was fun." But you're like, there needs to be more Wake. There must be more
Wake. More Wake. And now we're getting more Wake, thanks to Sam Lake, and everybody's happy. What we're also getting is a Wonder Woman game.
World premiere.
Which Keely introduced this as being like the one thing that didn't leak. So lots of things coming
That
up,
should
but
be
this
the
is one
announcement
thing
instead
no
of
one
world
guessed.
premiere. The one thing that didn't leak.
We have no information about this game other than it's been developed by Monolith, who made Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, both of which are pretty good games. And this is not affiliated with the films.
So we won't get to hear.
There'll be a weird sound alike. There'll be something that's got screaming kind of like abrasive vocals and be like, oh god, I'm powered up. My super's available.
If that played every time your super was available, this would be a 10 out of 10 game for me.
Totally.
The story is Diana fights to unite her Amazon family and the humans from the modern world. It's going to be a single player open world action adventure game. Or action game, sorry. I added the word adventure. There will be no adventure in one. That's all we know. I mean, I'm surprised it's taken this long for a Wonder Woman game to happen, except for what I can only assume is sexism. Like, what's the reason that Wonder Woman hasn't had her own modern?
I feel like a lot of the, apart from Batman, obviously, a lot of the DC characters are a part of ensemble games, and it's even the same with superheroes, like from the Marvel canon as well. It's that thing of thinking they should have their own game, and they often do, and they're not great. Like even Iron Man and stuff that you'd be like, oh, there has to be. I mean, there's the outliers, Batman, Spider-Man, something like that. But there's a lot of superheroes that you think, where's their own game, and they're kind of shit.
Yeah, Superman obviously not good in video games.
Yeah, it seems like an obvious one. Obviously, from the trailer, it's just like some close-ups of some cool costume elements and stuff. But I feel like if there's going to be a game style that this could work, the whole using the Middle-earth
Nemesis
style, using the Nemesis system, which I'm less interested in, and I'm more interested in like the third-person action platforming style that they used for those games, which was very like you could become very powerful and leap about and do a lot of things, which I feel like would be perfect for Wonder Woman. So I think it feels like it's the right style to play in a fun way. But yeah, I don't know if the Nemesis system needs to work like in the same way, but maybe she's just, lassoing criminals and making them talk.
When it works though, like
that's true.
That's true. That was the best part of Middle Earth, like because otherwise it's a pretty like it's a very competent action slasher with some spells. Where
I just don't want to see a carbon copy of calling it the Nemesis system and moving into another game. It's like that's why I'm less interested in versus it being like cleverly woven as like, oh, this feels a bit like the other one. It'll be like, no, it'll zoom in on them and they'll be like, I'm gonna get you, and I'm like, why is there an orc here?
Well, there's an orc here. The Nemesis system. I mean, did they end up copywriting it? I know they did. Yeah, they got a patent. They got a patent for it. That's right. So that's why no one else has really been able to use it. I do hope that as a result, that means that they have come up with really interesting new things to do with it. Because I really like the Nemesis system, but I agree that it's also one of those things of like, if it's just the same thing again, it's kind of like, well, why have you been holding this in your pocket for 7 years or whatever? Yeah. But yeah. I also her kit is pretty cool. Like the strong, deflecting, the whip, she could have her invisible
lasso,
plane.
like it works as it's like to move around a lot. Like
So it feels like you could have a grapple and a like pull people in and a and something for sexy.
The only thing that never gels is just having an invisible plane at the same time. The one part that I don't know how they'll incorporate that. Maybe that's your super. You just pull the boat and it lands on an enemy, and you're like, oh god.
It's just like I mean, I've never been a huge Wonder Woman comics reader, but it's one of those things where it's like the rest of the stuff makes sense because she's a warrior, and then she gets an invisible plane. It's like, all right, sure. I don't know. I missed that part where the Amazons developed that technology.
She has an invisible plane?
Yeah.
She literally from canon, like from the old TV series to the comic book, she has an invisible jet.
Why does she just
so
fly?
often she doesn't fly. She just sits flying through the sky in a jet that's invisible. It's in the latest film as well. Yeah, it's an invisible plane that has developed into an invisible jet. If you watch the latest Wonder Woman 84, there's a very hokey scene that's called out where they get in a plane and go, oh, we're going to get spotted. And she goes, hang on, I think I remember a trick. Ask Steph about this. And she goes, hang on.
Steph
makes
said,
it visible.
Yeah, oh, no, I thought Steph said that she learned how to fly.
She does then in the end of that film in a weird kind of way that uses music from Sunshine. So it's a whole hot mess, but hopefully the game doesn't incorporate any of the invisible
Sorry,
stuff.
Pete, I really encourage you to just Google right now invisible jet Wonder Woman and then go to the images because the way that they always show it is incredibly satisfying. That it's like a see-through plane and she's just perched in midair.
There you go.
Because otherwise you just have, if you try to draw that,
it's someone sitting in the air,
an empty page.
Yep.
You just have like there's nothing on the page if you do actually make the whole thing invisible. So they always have to show her in it,
and it just feels completely redundant because then there's just someone sitting in the sky.
My God, that's the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Everyone look it up when you get a chance. It's great.
Now imagine landing that invisible jet on the same orc over and over and over again.
Good joke, Gus.
And they just keep getting angrier. Cool. So staying with DC as well, we got a gameplay reveal for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which got announced last year at DC, or was it this year at DC Fandom? No, last year. Yeah. So this is the Suicide Squad video game featuring King Shark, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot. We hadn't seen gameplay before. We just saw a very stylistic teaser. And now we're seeing what this game is, which is like, the first thing I thought was like Guardians of the Galaxy, but you just control the other characters as opposed to direct the other characters.
That's exactly what I thought too.
The main thing that I took away from this is like how boring cities are.
Yep.
So much of this was just like fighting on a rooftop and everything's kind of concrete. And I'm sure that it will be fun and all those things. But I was kind of like, oh, this looks like, I don't know, this just looks like a video game.
Because from memory, this is a city that's, I think it's Metropolis, and it's Brainiac. And Brainiac has kind of like tendrils everywhere, which is the thing that's messing it all up. But you're right, at the same time, Metropolis, arguably like the boringest of the cities in the sense that it's just, it's not even, oh, that's New York, I can recognize bits. It's generic New York lookalike kind of vibes. So, yeah, it looks like it's got some cool punkish sort of style to it, and in all the trailers we've seen, and this one too. But the
combat looks fun. Like I think the variation of the combat looks really good, particularly the idea of like doing someone like Deadshot, where you're shooting, jumping around, that sort of thing, and then like it doesn't explicitly say, but hopefully them being able to just like quick transition to say King Shark to come in and like hammer the ground. That is what I want this to be, where you can bounce between all these characters, but it might be that you need to like load out a character for each mission or whatever.
It looks fun.
Yep, it does look good.
Yeah, gameplay looks nice.
Anything to add, Peter?
No, gameplay looks good.
No,
I agree with all the sentiments. Looks like, rather than like going to colorful places, you bring the color. Particularly, is his name Boomerang?
Yep, Captain Boomerang.
Yeah, he seems to be like throwing purple shit around, and be dressed colorfully. Yeah. There's a couple of locations that look like they got a bit more style than just being like big grey boxes, but
And also, like after Guardians as well, it's fun to play in an ensemble. It's fun to play with a team around. So I hope that it does turn into a game where it's like they're there the whole time and lots of like arguably different chemistry, but like, but it'd be fun to have just quips galore in all of it, because I think that's what the personality is, where the appeal of this whole sort of team comes from. So yeah.
The only thing I don't like is Captain Boomerang's face, and I don't know what it is. There's just something about it where I'm like, I don't want to spend time with this person.
That's not Jai Courtney. I need more Jai in my game.
I need more Jai Courtney.
Yeah.
Gus, you need more Somerville in your life?
I do. I need some at least. This looked beautiful in the sense that I like any good indie, obscure, art house kind of beautiful but dark game. I have no idea what it's about. I just love the vibe. I love the sound that was in this trailer. I love the art style. And yeah, it's got some really good sort of developers, or the team Jump Ship, I think, is made up of some developers who've come from
the Far Shore.
Maybe just that's the vibe you're getting from that.
No, but that's the vibe.
There is a lot of that, but I think there's some cool. The team's made up of some people who've worked on some really cool games, and yeah, it just looks really mysterious and really great soundtrack, and hopefully kind of has a cool dystopic family on the run vibe. That's everything I could take from every piece of material I found from this. But yeah, I love these kind of games. And I think it looks like it's got a little bit of action to go with all its dark, broody mystery.
This is the shot. The two little orbs racing each other. It's like, oh, there's a pace to this in some points.
Well, I'm sure it'll have that slow walking through a dark old shopping centre where suddenly things jump out from shelves. But if it has a bit of action to it as well, could be really exciting. So yeah, it looks really nice.
It was like Jet the Far Shore meets Inside meets Kentucky Route Zero
with a bit of limbo
Yeah. So no, it does look cool. It coming out in 2022. We don't know much more than that, but we will when it comes out, because that's how the world works. When you can play something, you tend to know about it. Peter, we know that we're not going to get hands-on to Saints Row for another 6 months after its initial release date, being pushed back to August. But what did you think about the trailer they showed off?
I was watching the Game Awards on my phone on the way back up the mountain on Saturday morning, and I looked away and then looked back down and I was like, this game looks like it's got fucking everything. What is it? I missed the Deep Silver at the start, and I missed all the Saints Row, and I was like, this is like a fucking awesome time. And it's Saints Row. It looks great. It's got fucking everything that an open world game has had, plus wingsuits, plus like, it's like, it's just everything you could think of looks to be in here. And it looks really good. Like if it runs smooth in an open world setting, like all this stuff looks really dynamic and colorful, and like the lighting's nice, and I look forward to jumping into like what feels like a very modern big open world after GTA kind of is the last of this style of game. So GTA 5 2010.
Yes.
No,
yeah. God,
it was
it's been
after
forever.
13 or something.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, okay. It wasn't that far after though. The thing I got from this was it kind of felt like this is what I expected Cyberpunk could be like. It has a lot of really varied locations, really fun look, like everything has a really strong identity visually, and it looks like an open world that would be fun to hang out with, to hang out in, and the ability to, like, I think that according to this trailer at least, it seems to strike that right balance between what Saints Row became, where it's like you're a complete superhero, but also then what it wanted to be, which was a really decent open world action game. Like a GTA style thing. And yeah, I had not been sold on this until this trailer. I had been like, oh, I don't know. It felt like by removing some of the weird batshit stuff from Saints Row it had lost the identity of what that made that series slightly different than everything else. But then watching this, I was like, no, this looks like a hell of a fun time. Gus, did this suck you in as well?
I did the same thing as Pete. I was skimming some trailers and I was like, hang on, what was this? And I saw the wingsuit and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, oh no, this looked like a far more bombastic version of what when they announced this as a kind of reboot for Saints Row. I knew they were going to lean into some wacky with the gangs and some of the like maybe vehicles, but I didn't know they were then going to push hard into the kind of open world, almost crackdown level of crazy. But I think it looks like it's striking a good balance where hopefully the missions and hopefully there's like the missions and the characters make the sandbox elements fun, because I've run into a problem with these kind of games where it's like there's so much you could be doing that it just turns into something to blow off a bit of steam and to kill time, like running around and being chaotic. But it's got to still have like, I don't know, cool cool like anti-gang, or they're called the police. Cool like police and other factions who are trying to constantly like break you down versus just being an all-out superhero, which I feel was the problem when they got to the third. It was like you just felt a little too powerful and dying wasn't really a problem. So I hope there's still a challenge to it, I guess. I'm sure there will be, but it just like, I think when you get given so many options of ways to do things, the game stops being something you have, in a challenging kind of way. So I hope it gives that
say no
up, but then
fears
keeps the
and no limits. So it
I need
might
some
not be too
limits, Peter.
challenging.
couple of limits would be nice.
One fear and a couple of limits.
Few small limits, and then this looks fun.
Okay, I'm excited for this one, and I'm glad that they're delaying it to make sure that it lands properly and doesn't land in February when everything else does. Something that also oozes personality, but a very different kind of game. Thirsty Suitors. This was I missed this in the show. I don't know when this got revealed. Maybe it got revealed in the pre-show or something. But I only saw this on like an article later on. But it's from the developers of Falcon Age, a game that seemed cool, but I never really got into. But this is they say it's a game that explores friendships, familial expectations, breakups, small town gossip, cultural differences through turn-based combat, skateboarding, and cooking. So this feels like all the weird things that I like to see in a game. Or not weird, there's nothing weird about cooking. But whatever this guy is doing right now is incredibly weird. It has a really strong cultural vibe as well. I couldn't actually find info of what culture we're sort of coming from, but it seems like some South American or Latin, Spanish something vibe that you don't see in video games almost ever. And it's got this sort of like dance turn-based combat thing, battle your exes, disappoint your parents, find yourself. A total vibe, as they say.
Yeah.
Very neat.
Is it Indian?
I was
It is
say,
Indian. Okay, cool.
the little music and bits of music and clothing.
But it does look like it's that culture transplanted to like Northwest America, like Portland vibe, that sort of hipster
totally.
Life is
Portland.
Strange area where it's like there are these funky cafe arty areas surrounded by pine woods and stuff like that. So which is almost a flavor in itself now for video games, which is where you would set a game like this, I guess.
Yeah. So it looks cool, and I like the art style. So I'm keen for more of this.
If that gameplay loop in the middle of like battling your exes, sort of Scott Pilgrim style, with a fun, a twist on the combat being like relationship arguments or something, that could be really cool, I think. Yeah,
it could be cool. It's nothing like it, but it reminds me of kind of what Catherine was doing with the idea of like battling your sexuality and stuff, which I don't know, it just feels like something that has a strong identity. So it's coming apparently soon. We have no more information other than soon. Speaking of spicy things.
Oh, I'll pay that one.
Thank you very much. June Spice Wars, Gus.
Yeah, this is not much to see in the trailer itself, other than the announcement that it's a real-time strategy. Very much, obviously, if anyone is old enough to remember playing the original Dune game, which I did, which was like your Command and Conquer style top-down RTS where you manage the families or the houses and harvested spice and all that kind of stuff. I just saw the film this weekend and I loved it. And so I'm just, it was wonderful. And I'm just like ready to get into all things Dune. And I feel like an RTS could be great. The developers who are working on this are the team who did that Norse one recently that had like a beautiful art style. I forget the name of it, but it was like a Norse villager builder that did really well on PC. And so yeah, it looks like they're coming straight out of one successful RTS into this, but obviously a lot to draw from. Shiro Games, I think, are the developers, and they clearly are doing well. Northgard, thank you. And so to dive into something like Dune that has heaps of lore and heaps of cool tech and all that kind of stuff could be awesome. Pete, you liked the film too? Would you like the game?
I fucking loved the film. I would love the game to have bought into Villeneuve's design, which I don't think they have, because that was I think the spectacular thing about the film is the design and how it was put together.
This might be leaning a bit back into the book. Because
my answer is no, I'm not interested in this game. but if it looked a little more like the film, then maybe I would buy into it that way.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not particularly interested in playing a big RTS about not letting your mining patrols get eaten by worms. Yeah.
But it'll be adorable and terrifying at the same time. Just little units. They got to ride those worms, Peter. They got to ride those worms.
Perhaps they will. Spoilers for Dune.
I love.
That's not a spoiler.
It's not in the film yet.
I love the hand there at the end. I think that's a very evocative. I get frustrated with things like this because I'm like, oh fuck yes, God. So much atmosphere, so much design, and then it's like a 4X real-time strategy game. I'm like, God damn it!
You will see none of that.
Yeah, totally. It'll just be this little grid of things that are all
literally the trailer just there shows a little on a city, and you're like, well, there's the action.
Yeah, that's the action.
I'm not getting.
And that's like turn one, and it's already gone wildly out of control. But cool. It's coming to early access in 2022, and then they're going to start adding on. So early access is going to have the single player, and then they said that I'll play single player, and then multiplayer and a campaign will be added during the early access.
I believe Northgard did the same kind of
like,
process as well. They built their framework, and people loved it, and so they then built up on that. So
cool
for the devs.
Yeah. And then the game that I think looked the best, it was the visual showstopper, in my opinion, was Hellblade 2: Senua's Saga, and the gameplay that we saw was 6 minutes of gameplay. It was not a pre-rendered cutscene. This is a mission in the game. And Pete, this one, like, I loved the stuff that I saw from this. How do you feel?
Yeah. It just looks like very daunting. This whole setup is like thrilling. It's a beautifully orchestrated piece of gameplay. The way the camera moves through. Obviously, there's like this has got to be pre-rendered, this bit. This fly through until they get into the cave, right? I don't know. The original game was very cinematic in how it was put together as well. So it's probably all happening in engine somehow because they're wizards. And she just teleported, which is fine. Like this whole sequence is almost promising like classic God of War combat, but without any of the color, and it's all the grit. And I think like they really nailed that tone with the first crack with Senua's Sacrifice, and I'm very excited. I think like we're seeing, we get all up in arms about like we never see any original ideas, particularly with film, but like it happens with games as well. Like there's never an original idea. And I was about to say, I'm about to bring up two things which continue that, even though I'm going to argue against it. Recently, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, not a new IP, but a brilliant first crack at that kind of game, and we want to see a sequel. I've just been playing Halo Infinite over the weekend. I really, really adore it, and I think that it's like the next version of that from 343 as well will be building on something really brilliant, an excellent foundation. And Senua's Sacrifice was one of those excellent foundations from the past 5 years, which has been given a crack at having another chance to build something bigger with the ideas that they built into the first one. And I'm really excited to see them do that. And it looks like they're fucking going hard.
Totally. Like on just a technical level, this looks, and they were, as you said, they were very technically ambitious with the first one, considering the size of the team and the scope of the game. It was like they were already pushing it to breaking point with the sort of the face cap technology and all that kind of stuff. It looks like now that, because these guys got bought by
Microsoft.
Was it this?
Microsoft.
They were bought out by Microsoft. So yeah, the things that they will be able to, the toys they can play with to make the game look like this, you're right, Pete, is some form of wizardry. But great to have teams with like amazing art direction and very messed up kind of like,
Isn't it great?
just sort of devices in their head to go like, this is the kind of game we want to make that's not safe. It looks really ambitious, and I hope it delivers on it because it looks damn moody.
Yeah.
And dark.
It'll be interesting to see what the gameplay is like. I haven't played the first one. I've played a little bit. I actually started playing it a couple of months ago, and it's on my list to like check out over Christmas. I loved the opening when you're in the boat going through the thing. I was like, oh, I'm fucking in on this. And then
it's a perfect Christmas game to get you right in the mood, Nick.
It's a happy family game. But I like saying that this is gameplay. It is one of those things where it's like gameplay is a very loose term of like you're interacting with the game at prescribed moments. But I think that's fine. Like we need different kinds of things, and having this kind of experience just looks so thrilling. I also love what it's doing with the giants. I personally love this thing where like Norse creatures, not Norse creatures, fantasy creatures are sad.
Yeah.
So I like when giants aren't like, oh, this big angry thing, but instead it's like
horror.
A baby, like an overgrown baby that is confused and in pain. I don't want that, but I love that as an idea.
Nick likes baby pain, confirmed.
I like baby pain, and I like them when they're overgrown. And it's a bit like Attack on Titan as well, like that idea of just going like, oh, there's something really unnerving and gross and unsettling about this thing, and
you're right.
I can't look away from this fucking shot.
Drawing on this kind of area and this folklore kind of stuff, there's so much like dark, twisted fairy tale stuff that's just like, they can clearly have a lot of playroom with to come up with some really disturbing stuff, and there's heaps of that in the first game too. So yeah, you really enjoyed that.
The other thing, and we're kind of hearing it now, but not really, is that stood out to me in this trailer is just how good the performance from, I can't remember the name of the actress who is performing Senua, but in the first, for people who don't know, in development of the first game, she was on the development team and stood in to mocap and do the voice while they were looking for an actor.
Scanning him by the end, I think. Yeah.
And then they just were like, well, you're perfect. And kept her. And I mean, an incredible performance from this little sequence as well.
So
just
good.
The screaming. And that's good scream acting.
It's good scream acting, and Nakritex pointed out in the chat the whispers in your ears in this game fucked me up in a way I can't explain, and it's totally true. It did in the trailer for this as well, in that opening sequence. It is, and it screws you up because it is that it's mimicking what your brain does.
It's mimicking what your brain does. Your brain can't concentrate when there's someone whispering behind you.
See, this is really disturbing.
Right, this is painful for the listener too.
It's the same thing that triggers people with ASMR, because it feels like it's in your brain, and totally. It's such an effective device. And so I'm stoked. Another visual showcase, which you can play right now, Gus, is Matrix Awakens, an Unreal 5 engine experience.
Gus, go.
Not so much a game, but something that I was just intrigued by the way this was presented and what it turned out to be. Essentially, the team at Unreal have like sort of showing off the technical capabilities of their engine by doing this weird tie-in with the Matrix. This trailer like blended back and forth between real life footage with Keanu and is it Carrie-Anne Moss? and like went from this weird sort of like announcement video where they were like, oh, what is the Matrix, what is games, what are movies, and then it moved into a demo that you could be playing on PS5 and Xbox, which was like a completely on rails thing, but it was in engine in terms of this like shooter at the back of the car, which then again looked spectacular. Everything about it looked amazing, but then it moves into a kind of open world engine tester, which again I've just watched lots of people playing it because I didn't bother to download it on mine, and it looks amazing. Essentially, Unreal have said like they've built this huge city that you can walk and drive in. That's about it. Like there's not much to do in the game, and they like tout that like the whole thing is lit by the sun, like one light source lights the whole world. Like, so there's some really cool things that they've done that ambitiously show off what they are trying to sell to developers, where they're like, this is all there for you to play with right now if you wanted to. There's heaps of kind of like AI based things to fill the city out and do that kind of stuff, or to fill your game out. The fact that they tied it to the Matrix is what intrigues me. I'm really pumped for the film coming out soon, and I hope that this is, I mean, there's been no actual announcement of a Matrix game. This is just like a way to show off the engine, but I think hopefully this could build up a bit of hype to maybe, if the film does well, to say, let's do a game that really wants to play with this level of immersion, because it looks freaking insane at moments. Yeah. But as a game, not really a game, and I'd probably advise you just go watch people play through on YouTube in 4K, and that's about all you need to see. But very cool tech.
Yeah, I'm going to check this out this afternoon. I'm excited for it because like Unreal Engine 5 is supposedly the thing that is going to push the consoles, the place that you want new consoles to be pushed.
The funniest thing is when people get out of the little like on-rail section, they get to stand by themselves and get into a car. And I watch 4 different YouTube videos, and immediately they drive into the people to see what happens. And then you drive through them and they do Matrix little... They all just like pop into the green pixels. But every one of the 4 videos just shows that no one goes, oh, I wonder what driving down the street. Everyone just goes, ah, and just steers directly off the road. So they're all...
We're a sick bunch, aren't we?
I think that, I mean, obviously it's a marketing thing, and Matrix worked with Epic on the film. But I think it's also smart doing something like this, because I think that a lot of tech demo game things, like I remember the first Unreal 5 one where it was like that woman walking through a sort of like ruin and opened up into a city and stuff. Yeah. You look at it and you go, oh yeah, I guess this looks like a video game, and it looks like a slightly better version of something that I'm already playing or something. The advantage with this is, you know what these people are supposed to look like in real life, and the fact that it is so close that you can't quite tell. Like there are shots in there where I'm like, oh shit, that's not actually Keanu.
It's nice to tie it to something that we can tangibly go,
impressive.
That could be a game, versus, oh, it's fantasy person on a cityscape with a dragon and flames. It's just like, that feels like an in-movie video game where it's just like, this is all fake. This isn't really, this couldn't be a game. Whereas this could, and this could be cool.
Yeah. It's also like, it's also the perfect IP to tap into, because the light reflections are obviously the thing that they're trying to show off. And as far as the Uncanny Valley goes, you don't want to see eyeballs. And this is a series where everyone wears sunglasses all the time at night, inside, doesn't matter. Wearing sunglasses,
Pete,
hide the eyes.
You want to show off reflections. What's the best time?
It's ray
What's the best time and place? Where's the best time and place to show off reflections, Peter?
I don't know. You're
outside,
referencing
in the street, during the rain.
Yes.
And who's there?
John Wick, wet in the rain.
John Wick. All the wet in the streets.
All wet in the streets.
That's so
and wet
true.
in the sheets.
It's like, if you could, if you could break the game at some point, it'd like rip the glasses off everyone's face. It would just be like the most low poly count eyeballs ever, where they're like, we put no effort into this.
They just cubes.
All the eye work has gone into the city. I love it. I'm going to check this out today. I'm excited. Gus, talk to me about Nightingale.
This again looked like just such a super pretty game. I think, Pete, you were the one who mentioned you were probably a bit more excited about this, just in terms of like a blending of battle royale genre. No, am I mixing this one up with a different game?
Sorry, Pete. Talk to me about Nightingale. This was not a Gus game. This was a Pete game.
This intrigued me, but Peter, do tell why.
I don't think it's a battle royale. It might be. I was just I just like the fantasy design being a little more gothic horror than like classic fantasy, even though there are elements definitely of like the like European fantasy setting of, you know, giant elk walking through a big misty wood. So there's all that stuff, but there's a lot more like fae kind of ideas going on as well.
Survival, not battle royale. Yep. Sorry, that's what I was going with. Yep.
Yeah, like very, very cool design. Not a lot of gameplay shown, but the first-person perspective that they do show looked really cool. I don't think I'd be interested in playing it for like the characters. Like I'm not like in a third-person setting, but like to be in first person in that world was immediately something I was like, that could be really, really awesome. But yeah, here's the survival elements of it, and you know we've had some fun with those in the past, and sometimes they're a little underwhelming, but it's almost like Valheim it just cranked up to, you know, 1 million.
Or what New World wants to be.
Totally.
That's what I was thinking when I was watching this.
New World and Hunt Showdown had a baby.
Yeah, it's really playing in the New World space in a sort of visual sense, but I'm loving all the different things in this. Like you start off in this sort of like Victorian, we've landed on this island and we're trying to make our way. And then suddenly there's giants, there's a Wild West style shootout area, there's the Tesla towers, like all this stuff looks very, very cool. Yeah. Like, the shared world survival crafting game is one of Nick's least enjoyed game types, but I love the space that this is playing in. It does look very
I think
cool.
there is a mini game where you have dance battles with the monsters, and then the winner has to cook for the loser has to cook for the winner. So that's going to be a big part of the game as well.
And just
so you just call me you just call me in when you get to those bits, and I'll play that stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. And then Gus, you and I are both pretty keen on Have a Nice Death Day. Which
this is if Hollow Knight and Death's Door had a baby, I think. It's the best way to put it. This looked great. I've seen a few trailers of this in the lead up, and again, the parallels between it and Death's Door are unfortunate, because I think it's a cool premise where you're a little Grim Reaper who works for, you know, you're stuck in the bureaucratic nature of all the
bureaucracy.
Yeah, and that was something that Death's Door had and probably didn't need as much. Like, you know, that game felt so unique, whereas this one feels like they're leaning hard into the kind of irony of being overworked because everyone's dying and that kind of stuff. So, cute premise, and I'm sure they came up with it and were like, oh no, another game's doing the same thing we're doing. But in terms of gameplay, less of the isometric slasher and more of your Hollow Knight's side scroller, procedurally generated, which I'm excited about because I like, and I know you really like, Nick, those kind of your Hollow Knights, your Oris, your tailored spaces that you can enjoy this kind of combat in. Whereas I do really like procedural generation when it's done well, when it's nice big chunks of level that are sort of slapped together in interesting ways, and that keeps the replayability up. This looks a little more, I want to say, sort of action focused with the combat. I'm sure it'll be difficult. I don't really know if they've brought up the difficulty of it in terms of if it is brutally punishing or more fun action focused.
I think it will be.
With any name with death, right? Yes.
So it's you're playing in Dead Cells. You're playing in that sort of world, which the procedural generation and the difficult combat. I'm totally here for it. In that,
and one of the consultants on it worked on Dead Cells, so it's like, if you're looking at a game with good difficulty curve, good procedural generation levels, and great feeling combat, then this I think. You couldn't do any worse than drawing from that game. So, plus a cool little art style here looks heaps of fun.
Yeah, it looks super cool. I think that I really enjoyed Death's Door, but Death's Door really felt like a game that got 70% there. I don't think it capitalized on it, particularly on its theme, on that bureaucracy thing. It just felt like this wrapper that it put in, as opposed to something it really like.
You should have lent harder into the Ghibli style weird nature of all those little places that you visited versus coming back to the office style thing. Didn't feel like they'd done enough with it. Whereas here, it's like you're fighting your way out of the office at points with like paperwork and stuff.
I'm massively into that. It's launching on early access on PC in March, which is now kind of like what roguelikes do. So it might be launching with not a huge amount of content, but it's basically that thing of like, you can't really launch a roguelike just cold anymore. You need to have a year of testing so that it is perfect, a la Hades or something. I have unfortunately high expectations for this one, so
as do I. I like that the perfect Switch games never come out on Switch at the start.
Totally.
They always port to it. Everyone sees it and goes, on Switch? It's on Switch? This looks like something to play on Switch? It's not. Everyone gets really like fervent, like watching all the YouTube videos of it on PC, maybe play the first hour on PC, and then when it drops on Switch, goes and buy it and never play it on that platform.
That's why you need to drop $900 on a Steam Deck, because just for early access roguelikes. And then, or you could just buy yourself a mobile phone, Pete, and you get Google Play games on your computer.
That's true.
So you don't need to buy the mobile phone, actually. So that was a clunky segment. I'll admit that.
You'd probably need a Google account, though. So it was announced that Google are releasing a first-party app to let you play mobile games on Windows devices, which, I might make me more inclined to play things, mobile-style games. Like, I just never play anything on my phone. I've always, for the past 10 years, I've always had, like, a top-of-the-line phone and not used any of the features that you're afforded by having the top-of-the-line phone, including playing high games. It's just a camera. Things like Diablo Immortal or anything fun, like Jetpack Joyride released on the Microsoft Store, it must have been like 4 years after it came out on mobile phones. And I played the shit out of it on my PC. It's like one of those things where it's just like you sit there with a mouse and you click and to fly around. I think making those games, because like the two platforms, mobile and PC, while PC, keeps getting hardier and hardier, mobile phones, the development for them, the games that they have on them are getting more and more interesting as well. And it'd be cool for developers to be able to be developing games for the Google Play side of things that is emulated well across to PC, and save them a lot of energy. I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to work. Maybe it'll only be games that are compatible with PC architecture end up on the Google Play app on the Windows devices, but I'd like to see a cool emulation of what mobile phones can do. And it might even allow you to play, people who want to play mobile games might have a laptop that's slightly better than their phone or something, and be able to get a better version of, I guess there must be up to Asphalt 27 now, the racing game where you tell you.
Well, also games like this might not be the best use of it, but something like Clash of Clans or Clash Royale, that sort of stuff, where they're those games that can sit in their own window while you're doing something. It's a good move. It's a good move for Google Play. I think that the one thing that I have really been interested in seeing is that, like, I always felt like Apple had an ecosystem where it was like, we provide all the things that you need for this, and Google and Android phones for years for me felt like you have available to you lots of things that can do this stuff, but it all comes from sort of different places. And I feel like the Android ecosystem over the last few years has been really coalescing into like being something like the Apple one, while still very open, actually going, oh, you can like totally go in on the Google verse, and something like this, as well as the idea of like, now your stuff can go between PC and your phone, is a very big step up.
You can play arcade games, can you, on like a Mac laptop?
Yeah, the Mac has games.
The App Store is on
store.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and that they like a year or two ago they changed a lot of the architecture of their stuff so that like basically the same thing works on on iPad and your computer and your phone. It's basically the same app, sort of goes between the three. So yeah, this is the similar sort of thing, and it's really cool. So that is the major stuff from the Game Awards. There was tons there. I think it was a really great show in terms of those reveals. I think there was lots of really fun stuff, and there was also a Sting performance, which I was not expecting the show to open with a performance from Sting, but there you go.
No one ever is.
It really
is there.
And then there's Sting. It really is. The Game Awards really is just like Jeff Keighley's id. It's just like the things that he likes. Like he likes Sting, and that's why Sting also provided fucking for something. But it is just like Keighley's interests on a stage. What a strange place he's put himself. Yeah. Okay, let's get through the rest of the news because we are running out of time. We won't burn through this one too quickly, but a huge article came out on IGN last week called "The Battle for Bungie's Soul: Inside the Studio Struggle for a Better Work Culture," in the wake of a lot of people coming out against from within a lot of companies, exposing toxic workplaces or difficult environments to be in. Obviously, there's been Activision, we've seen Ubisoft, Quantic Dream, which we heard about earlier in the show, tons of places. Bungie is the latest studio on this list that has been accused and put under the microscope for this kind of behavior. It is a huge article, and the biggest takeaway seemed to be that there was some very bad stuff in here. There was a lot of boys club style sexist glass ceiling stuff, a lot of really awful anecdotes and stories about how women were talked to and treated in the workplace. It was not, quote unquote, as bad, it seems, as the Activision one, where there was less there weren't really stories of assault. It was more a difficult environment to be working in. But there was also a lot of stuff in here that which was interesting. It was like things of, it's a creative space to work in, and then creatives were feeling like their creative vision or their creative work wasn't being valued as much. And that, to me, I don't know about you guys, felt like a bit of a weirder thing to focus a lot of this article on, about like people disappointed that things they wrote were being rewritten by someone else. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a slightly different thing than the really bad stuff, but you've put it in the same article. I feel like I'm wading into a thing here, but yeah.
No, I think you're right in saying that it's a big article, so then it's covering a lot of points that people are bringing up. But it is, I don't think it's strange. It's just there are separate issues with separate solutions, and there might be crossover in that in terms of respect from higher ups and that kind of thing. And it says a broader sort of thing about the company's attitude towards its, how, as I said, how it works out to upper management. But I do think those things need to be divided into camps to be sorted out with the right solutions and the right people, because just sort of putting it as like lumping it all in together, I think you could lose the effectiveness of both issues that are presenting themselves there, which, as we mentioned, one, I wouldn't say more serious, but could have some stronger ramifications in terms of all the things you mentioned in terms of the culture that's there, the possible abuse, the sexism, all that kind of stuff is very important. The other one of the creativity being hindered and things, it's like, yeah, that's something that happens in a lot of fields, and it's not right, but it needs to be managed in a way that, like, there's expectations, and there's, as a creative myself, it's like, it's something that you need to learn with criticism and having your work integrated and not integrated and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's healthy for it to be lumped in together, but I do think it's good that both are getting some attention, because I think they both need solutions eventually. I just, it's you would hope that people there aren't all seeing this as a chance to now shout out any and every concern you have, because that takes away from the people who've stepped out and put themselves in vulnerable positions to say, these are problems we've had that are really affecting us personally. And I would hate to see that get watered down, I guess. But you're right, it is a very difficult area to have an opinion on, because then everyone's concerns are real and valid, you would hope, and deserve a solution.
Yeah. It just sounds like a lot of to me, obviously, like the sexism and the glass ceiling stuff is, we're seeing it in a lot of the big studios, and it's heartbreaking that it is so prevalent in the industry. It's unfortunately not surprising to hear about it coming from a studio as big as Bungie. And I hope that stuff gets dealt with. And you're right, it does feel like that's when addressing that stuff is compartmentalized from the ideas of creatives not having their voices heard properly, and people working 60, 70, 100-hour weeks in leads up to expansion. Those things are bad management, and the other things are bad morality, and
bad people.
Bad people. So there's two separate things going on. The bad morality, needs to be dealt with in a different way to the bad management, and bad management can come from a lot of things. And it's like, you would have thought that of all the bad things you could say about Activision, that at least it would have whipped a studio into shape where there was like a lot of management, and not that necessarily a lot of management makes for a better flow of work, but it can make for more channels to communicate,
or a lot of systems, systems in place.
And it sounds like there's not a lot of communication in place. Obviously, crunch is a massive deal, but things like people were writing, writers were writing dialogue sequences, and that stuff would get altered, and they wouldn't find out about it until after it got recorded. And that's where you go like, okay. And we're told to get like thicker skins when their work gets changed from underneath them. But it's like, understand that like someone put their creative energy into something.
Someone's name is still credited to that writing that has been changed. So there's decisions like that can be heartbreaking to someone in a creative process, to be like, this undermines everything I thought I was bringing.
And it's bad communication, right? It's like, does the writer definitely deserves to be told that their work has, or could be, or has been changed since they submitted it. But the flow down should get there to that person before they find out about it by playing that sequence of the game post-release or whatever, and like, oh, that changed. What the fuck?
And I think that part of it. I saw earlier Nanogenes. I think it was Nanogenes in the chat was talking about how I just don't get why it's such a big deal in game development. It can't be simply these problems happening so much in game development. It can't be that hard to simply be a decent human being, and it's totally true. I think that the one thing with stuff like this is that in creative fields, like those companies just operate differently, and it's not good. But it's like the problem comes from like there is a certain subset of people within a huge team that are considered, and not only considered, but like sometimes are more vital to the team than other people, in that they have a creative vision that they are trying to put forward. And at some point, someone needs to be like the person making decisions on something. So when you are making creative decisions, you are making completely subjective decisions all the time. You are not making objective decisions. And lots of other businesses can be working in a more objective way. Whereas when you're making something like a video game or a film, you're making things where every choice is something that someone goes, I think this is the best choice, and you may disagree and think that something else is the best choice, but we have to do what I say. And that it seems like when people are given, when those people are then put in positions where their authority becomes so unquestioned, then that's when it seems to be opening up the chances for abuse of either mismanagement, like we've been talking about, or some sort of abuse. And you go, well, we can't get rid of that person because that person, this whole company is built around the idea of that person's ideas right now. And if we get rid of that person's ideas, we don't have a thing anymore. And that's a flaw in creativity in general. And so, yeah, it's interesting seeing this stuff come out, because I go like, oh yeah, I've worked in writers' rooms. I know what it's like doing that. And it is such a fine line between being a decent person but pushing for what you need to happen, and being controlling. And that's a really difficult line to walk. And in high pressure scenarios, it becomes harder and harder to walk that. And with people who have gotten massive egos and stuff, even harder. So yeah, it's interesting. This one is slightly different than the Activision stuff that's sort of come out. But
I would say there's people who have egos that think that people are beneath them, and there's also people who are just bad communicators for other reasons, like that they've found themselves with so much, not to excuse anyone's behavior, but found themselves in a position where they feel like they have too much responsibility on their shoulders, and their way to do that is to just to react to that is just close off and stop communicating with people.
Totally.
So it's and that's where the systems need to be in place to help that person and the people below them to catch that stuff before it becomes problematic. And it obviously hasn't in Bungie's case, where it's been allowed to stew for such a long time. And they're making a game that doesn't end. They don't have a normal. They have a semblance of that kind of normal cycle of release. The hills and troughs of the development cycle, but they really have a long roadmap constantly ahead of them. Like, there's never a time where they're like, right, pens down, what should we do next?
You can't leave the launch Christmas party and be like, great work, and like, where are you going? What?
Exactly. It's like,
we're still going.
Which Queen's February,
next,
and then the thing after that. If you've done your work on that, you're working on the thing that's 12 months from now, not 6 months from now. So it's just like it's an interesting beast, and I think a different beast to. Well, I mean, similar to Blizzard with a lot of their titles, like World of Warcraft is obviously live service.
But like you said, Nick, with film or something, it's like it's a slog because there's an air date. There's a time where you walk away from that set and you work to the bone because there's an end goal in sight. Whereas, as you mentioned, Pete, something like Destiny is just it's a
killing
beast,
yourself with crunch is like it's part of. We've all done it. The three of us have done it plenty. In the industry, that's how our industry works.
This show, everything that we do at the moment, and again, not excusing, but like, yes, it is one of those things of just like, there is time management, but then there's also like the realistic. One of the things in the story that I thought was most interesting is that they said that they didn't want to have crunch, but the writing team ended up crunching in secret because of the reception from the previous expansion that they launched was so negative, and there was so much hate, particularly on Reddit and particularly towards female members of the development team and the writing team. A lot of this story came out of the writing team, which is just fucked. But they crunched in secret so that the next expansion would be good enough that they wouldn't have to put up with that. And it's like, what do you do in that scenario? Like, that is like, I don't know what you do in that scenario where you're like, we want to make sure that this is the best version of this thing so that we don't get slammed and hated by people completely unrealistically and unfairly. But at the same time, it's like they're doing that in secret. Yeah, it's just so fucking messy.
Yeah, and it's because well, part of it is because art is involved, right? Like, there's the business saying you need to crunch, but then there's the artist saying, I will not be satisfied until this is at a certain level, and doing it to themselves, putting themselves through that pain, So it's such a
Fourth Reaper idea. In chat said, give them more time, perhaps. Which, yes, the problem with the live service thing is that you don't have the time to stop and look back at things, and so you're trying to change. Like, I've worked on lots of daily things where it's like change is so difficult because you still need to be putting out the next thing. So you can't really. Stopping something mid-tracks is really difficult. It's about planning at the beginning to make sure that you allocate enough of this. I think we're actually seeing more of that now. I think the fact that so many games have been delayed, not only because of COVID, but also because people are starting to go like, actually, you know what? Like, it's not the end of the world if it comes out a bit later, except for when you run out of money and you don't have anything. You have to put something out. So there are just so many fucking factors in something like this. It all gets fixed if you just remember that everyone is a human and try to treat people like you want to be treated, but that gets very easy to forget, apparently. Very quickly, Australia is getting its own gaming union, which will hopefully fix some of this stuff. There's been a push for unionization all over the world when it comes to the gaming space. And Game Workers Unite Australia, which has previously been an advisory, has previously been an advisory and support organization within Australia, announced that it's going to be transitioning to a full-blown union early next year. which is very exciting. It will become Game Workers Australia, and it will mean that all game industry workers can join the same specific union that will give everyone the same benefits and protections joining a union involves, specifically tailored towards the game's business to boot. So hopefully, if we can get this working as a system in Australia, it could become something to, hey, who's that guy? Something to mimic across the world and show that, hey, you know what? Having someone outside of the company backing you is actually not the end of the world for anybody. So that's just a good piece of news.
Yeah. We're the testing ground for new apps, so we should be the testing ground for unions.
Totally. That's so true. But it's a soft launch of a union.
Yeah. It's a beta union,
And then the final thing is that last week Ubisoft announced Quartz, their NFT platform. And if there's one thing you can say about Ubisoft, there is not a platform in the world that they are not on before anybody else. It is astounding how quickly they turned around a brand, a business model, a trailer, an implementation for NFTs. A JPEG.
a JPEG text that's texture wrapped around a helmet, Peter.
That's true.
Thank you very much. They are adding Ubisoft Quartz is the NFT division of Ubisoft. They're going to be adding NFTs to Breakpoint. There is a lot around this, which is basically like it's a serial number on a helmet or a piece of gear that shows that it's yours. You then can sell that thing. There's no details on how you sell that, whether Ubisoft keeps getting a cut of that, whether you keep getting a cut of that. You need to have completed a certain amount of hours within the game. Like you need to play 600 hours of Breakpoint before you can get the helmet, which is given to you for free, I believe, for this first set of drops, I suppose. I don't know. They say it's just the beginning. I don't see how this is anything different than just cosmetics that you buy in game.
We talked about this, Nick, the other day, and we'll keep brief, but it's like the thing that confuses me about this is, first of all, like the appeal of putting something that is NFT related into games, I thought was the idea that that item could be, I think it's been sort of talked about as the idea that object could be yours to keep and to move through games or like transfer to different titles. And like, I know that's not the part of it that's interesting to people is the uniqueness of it, but just the idea that this is an item for a game that is not probably their strongest game in terms of the sort of player base, and that you're creating an item that not only then is not unique in its shape because they're just slapping a number on it. They're not saying you get your own weird procedurally generated version of a helmet that you then keep and own. It's engraved with a number, which nothing is engraved in a video game. It is a texture or it is a number that is printed on the front of the gear. So it's losing uniqueness at each version of it that I look at and go like, I don't see the appeal, but obviously it's going in very tentatively to see what this does in terms of a player. Like if it gains some kind of radical popularization that people are like, oh, people are fighting over trying to get the number one version of this helmet or something, but I just don't see the appeal. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't, but am I missing something?
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand how they're NFTs and not just CSGO gun skins. Like, people,
the only thing could be that they're tracked in a different way. Like it's literally just
must
this
be a non-fungible
thing where they're on the blockchain.
That's proving that you own it, rather than them running their own store. They're just tapping into some kind of pre-established blockchain thing that lets them
can do all of that work.
Lets them track all that stuff. So that's the only difference. And it's, I mean, it's all just fucking dumb. It's all just.
I want to see the first clip of someone wearing the helmet running up in co-op being like, look, can you see it? Look.
Really close. Zoom in on my head.
438. Yep.
Shot.
Is
Breakpoint on? No, it's not on Steam. Is it? just on-
I don't believe so. It's just on UbiConnect.
Okay, yeah. Because I was going to say that I wonder because Steam came out and said that they're not going to allow games with NFTs
That's right, yeah.
on their platform, and I just wondered what that would do, but it's not on there. So yeah. Anyway, we'll fucking see. I'm sure there are shareholders somewhere who are excited by this, and literally no one else. All right,
Elvish-
that is literally
Elvish Cat says manufactured scarcity. I just wanted to bring that up because it's like that's obviously a thing. Valve do it as well. They limit the amount of or the rarity of items in those games, and they are given an inherent value based on the scarcity of them because people are interested in having rare things. And I guess this, you can't exactly tell when you're selling a Dota skin. You can't exactly tell how many of those exist out in the world. I think there might be a way, or at least you can see how many are on sale at any given moment. But ultra rare things, they can sometimes sell for a few $100s, and this gives people a very clear signal as to how rare something is. And also, in the same way that collecting anything works, having number 1 is also going to be more valuable than having number 100. So it's like it's a drive for the buyer who wants to get that first one, and also it's like it's a very clear signal of just like putting a fuel under that market of people who like to buy into this shit, which is manipulative and capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You are literally going to just be paying more because it says number 1 than it says number 200, and that's it. And it's weird. And anyway, look. Hopefully, global warming gets to us before this really takes off.
Fingers crossed.
All right, that's literally all the video game news that broke.